Very good afternoon to all. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome everyone to this seminar cum webinar today at the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. I'm delighted to see a large number of participants available online, and of course all the others who are present here. Today we have this public lecture. The title of the lecture is The Unfolding of a Tragedy, Key Issues in the Story of India's Partition by Professor Raghuvendra Tanwar, who is Professor Emeritus, Kurukshetra University. Professor Tanwar has had a distinguished academic record. His major publications include Reporting the Partition of Punjab, Press, Public and Other Opinions, 1947. Be Clear, Kashmir Will Vote for India. This book was published in 2019. The Politics of Sharing Power, the Punjab Unionist Party, and Frankly Speaking, which was a collection of articles contributed to various national dailies. The subject that Professor Tanwar is focusing on today continues to be as important as it was 75 years ago. And the fact remains that despite the passage of decades and despite the publication of a large number of books on the subject, there are so many aspects of it that remain neglected. And one such aspect is being addressed or has been addressed by Professor Tanwar in his latest book, which is here with me, The Story of India's Partition, published by the Publications Division of India, which in a way is a retelling of his research, which was earlier published in a much bigger volume of 650 pages or so. So, as far as the story of partition is concerned, there have been several approaches to it. The first question, the most important question that has generally been asked by the historians about the partition is, what caused the partition? What led to partition? And then the second question that has been addressed is, who were the people responsible for partition? Like, Lohia famously wrote a book, The Guilty Men of Partition. But very few people have actually focused on the voices that emerged from that time, from the period of 1945-46 to the years immediately following partition. What is it that people themselves were saying? People who were victims of it, and people who were in some way or the other affected by it, and also people who played some role in partition. And how was it being seen in the society, in the newspapers, in the media, by the cartoonists? What were these voices, representations, etc., etc.? This is something that remains relatively neglected. And Professor Raghuvendra Tanwar has done the commendable job of writing an excellent book on this subject. So we are delighted to have Professor Tanwar here. And we are grateful to him for accepting our invitation for this lecture. Without further delay now, I would like to invite Professor Tanwar to proceed with his lecture. Welcome.
Good evening, friends. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm grateful to the authorities of the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, particularly Shri Nipendra Mishra ji, who asked me to come and deliver this lecture. As Dr. Ravi Mishra has just said, the work started almost 25 years ago. It was published by Manohar in India and by Vanguard in Lahore, the publishers of Pakistan Times. Perhaps a reflection on the fact that it was a fair book. It was very well received across the world. But the feeling came that we need to come out with a simpler version, an illustrated version, and for the layman as well as the subject specialist. I will not, of course, be speaking on the book per se, but just to give you an idea that the need for such a book has been felt. Primarily for the fact that I, for one, have believed that the story of India's partition, or the narrative of partition, has been greatly understated in the historical discourse that we have grown up. In my generation, I started teaching in 1977 at the age of 21. It's a long, long time. History was something in the 70s, it was something in the 80s, and gradually a lot has changed since I started my studying and teaching of history. Partition has been one of the great victims of this discourse and of this narrative. In the next about 50 minutes, maybe a few minutes more, I'll be touching on some key issues. It's not possible to touch on an issue of such great dimensions. I'll just touch on issues that I felt are of serious concern. You know, we've touched 75 years of independence, and questions are beginning to be raised. My issue is not of how it happened, but rather why it happened, but rather how it happened, how it really unfolded. I'll start by giving you an indication of the scale of partition, the two-nation theory, how it was flawed, at least that's what I feel. And most importantly, that the narrative that we have learned, the narrative that has grown over the years, how it was something totally different. You know, I'll be showing you in the end of this lecture a set of illustrations. Thankfully, thanks to the library here, which is the finest library that we have in India. I have greatly benefited over the last 35 years working in this library. And much of what you see is actually based in this library itself. You just have to search it. So with these words, I'll just start off by drawing your attention to the key statistics. Can I have the first slide? No, the first one. You can, okay, if you're not, if you got the illustrations? All right, it's okay, it's okay. Only, you can just switch it off. See, the number of people, let me draw your attention. You can switch that off, I'll ask you to switch it on. The number of people engaged in the partitions, what we pass off as partition, you know, is 6 million Muslims moving out of what became, became 6 million non-Muslims moving out of what became West Pakistan. 6.5 million Muslims moving out of India into Pakistan. In Bengal, the process is a bit longer, between 47 and 50. So you have a figure, rough figure of about 4 million Muslims moving into West Bengal, 4 million non-Muslims moving into West Bengal, and about 1 million Muslims moving into the then East Pakistan. So this is just to give you an idea. All of us are familiar with the size, and so I'm just giving you a background kind of thing. So these dimensions of the migration, these figures are important because as I proceed in the lecture, you will see that there was no plan made for this exchange. That is why it is important to figures when 15, 16 million people are exchanging sides and we have no plans for it. That is issue number one. The killings, you know, there are different scholars have said different things about it, but a fair figure of around 500,000 to maybe, I'm quoting a figure as if it's a few, 500,000 to maybe 750,000, some have gone even up to 1 million, are said to have lost their lives. Records, most records are definitely above 500,000. So we could even go up to 1 million people. More important than the figures is the nature of violence, to which I'll just come. The number of women that were violated, that were abducted, that were violated in extreme forms, recorded figures exceed 100,000. It will be many times more. So that is just one idea of it. The nature of violence is something that you need to particularly understand. You know, it remains unprecedented in world history in times of peace, the nature of violence. The Nazis, Mao, Stalin probably killed many more, millions more. But the nature of violence between communities has no precedent in history. The way it was done. The objective was to make sure that the other community vacates a particular place. It becomes alarming because these people had lived together for centuries. you know, the dramatic manner in which it happens, you don't find answers. Manner in which it happened, and you force the other community to live. Let me emphasize here, that in the 29 districts of the then Punjab, not one village could claim exclusivity, that this is a Hindu village, this is a Muslim village, because they were all coexisting. This was a way of life in the Punjab. And it had gone on. See, anyone who talks of the two-nation theory, he completely dismantles the evolution of India as a nation. The concept of the evolutionary process, which students of history are very familiar with, it flies in the face of history to in the archives in London, where they had a hospital in Lahore for women whose breasts had been amputated. Now visualize the scene, the brutality of the killings. They had to open a special hospital for women whose breasts had been amputated. So violence was, but more importantly, the violence was both sides. Please don't go under the notion that it was one-sided. It was equally brutal on both sides, as many Muslim women suffered the fate as did others. So that you should be very clear on that. It was beastly. Now, when you talk of the two-nation theory, most scholars, in a lecture of this kind, I cannot, of course, go into the details here. It was basically an elitist idea. I will like to emphasize on this. The concept of two nations was essentially an elitist idea, limited to pockets, as I said just now. It was not something that the common masses of Punjab or of Bengal may have wanted. It was totally at the top-heavy level, elitist in pockets, where this two-nation theory takes birth. Something like the origin of the Muslim League, if you so. A very good economist, a very highly rated professor of economics, C.N. Vakil, the book that I rate as one of the best books on the implications of partition. He was a professor of economics at Bombay University. In 1950, this book was published. He quotes, I'm quoting him, "Effected on communal lines, partition could not and has not solved the communal problem." So he makes it very clear that the basic objective of partition, if it was to solve the communal problem, it was not achieved. So we have it very clearly said from here. And as I said, 29 districts of Punjab, you cannot cite one village which could be claiming to be a purely Hindu village or a purely, I'm born in a village, I belong to the village that was the last village to be vacated by Muslims from the Punjab. So I know this part very well. The bonding of the Muslims and the non-Muslims per se. Show me that first cartoon. All right. Now this is. Go back to it, please. This. See now this. No, the one. This one. The idea. This was the title page of my book, which was published in 2006. This is the Civil and Military Gazette. This is not Shankar. To Shankar we'll come back later. Seven. Now the idea is that India or the Punjab or Bengal were not. So the point is very clear here, and this is the contemporary point of view, that partition was flawed, and it was the idea to partition India was like cutting a living being into two. Next, you can close it down. Similarly, the idea of partition itself was sold as a temporary measure. All of us have seen magicians cutting a body on the stage. Usually it is women who are put in the magic and then you join them back, So this is a remarkable illustration that shows, that is Clement Attlee, the Prime Minister of Great Britain at that time. Again, When I tell you, please just change it when I request you to do so. You have the Prime Ministers, Jawaharlal Nehru, and you have Jinnah Sahab, and of course Mountbatten using the saw. Now, this is the feeling that it was a temporary measure. I'm emphasizing on this temporary measure because here lies the crux of the story. Masses of Punjab were told that this is a temporary measure and you're going to go back home. There's no need to move. See, a basic question arises, why was this so violent? Why did we lose so many lives? Why was the masses, why was the common man, whether he's Hindu, whether he's Sikh, whether he's Muslim, why is it that the Gandhiji repeatedly said this? The burden of partition was borne to almost a great extent, maybe over 90%, the deaths occur in the common peasantry, among the common, traditional occupants. So this idea was sold, this was a temporary measure, don't worry, things are going to come back to normal and do whatever you want. So this part is, you need to keep that in mind, that the idea, which of course has not been a part of the mainstream narrative. We've grown up learning that it was a political decision, it was inevitable, it was unavoidable. The contemporary versions do not accept that. The contemporary version that has been oversighted, that has not been a part of our mainstream discourse. You see, it is one thing to leave a shop and move out. I am from a landowning family. I know the love for land, particularly in the Punjab. When you ask a person to vacate his land, it is one thing. When you ask a businessman to close a shop and move out, from Lahore you can move to Jalandhar or to Simla or to Delhi. From Multan you can move ABC anywhere. But vacating a piece of land is asking someone to virtually give up his life. So this aspect you need to keep in mind when you talk of the temporary measure. Most people did wishful thinking. Let's not move out. It's not going to happen. Continue staying where you are. So that is how it moves. They are not moving out. They are waiting for the last minute. This last minute movement is the crux of understanding the nature of violence and the crux of understanding the dimensions of the violence. These people moved out. People were killed for a pair of bullocks. There are records, there are files that say a family was murdered for one buffalo, was murdered for a bag of grain. Because in the last village is surrounded, you have only a few hours to move out. So you can kill a person for a buffalo. You can kill a person for a bag of grain. This is what is happening in the Punjab, and this is why Gandhiji repeatedly says in his prayer meetings that the rich have fled and the poor have been left behind. This you can find repeated references to this in Gandhi's statements. Now, the next point that is very, very important is that it was a huge decision. We need not go about that. There was no consensus. You see, what are the bodies that give the consensus for partition? And who is the person? Jayaprakash Narayan, for example, questions the central legislature. He says it did not have the moral right to discuss partition. The All India Congress Committee that met on 14th June 1947 to resolve on partition had 400 members, 200 were present. Of these 200, 129 voted for partition. Some did not vote. The impression would be that it was one-sided. That is not the case. For students of history, it is important to see the proceedings. There was huge amount of opposition. Gandhiji walked out of the meeting. Tandon spoke for 1 hour, spellbound. Everyone but the persona of Jawaharlal ji and of course Gandhiji was such that people spoke against it, but they voted in favor. Typical. Individually, they were against partition, but collectively, the vote came in favor of partition. To which a lot of people have discussed this in contemporary records. So you have this famous dialogue between Nehru and Gandhi. Dr. Lohia discusses it in The Guilty Men of Partition. Gandhiji is telling Jawaharlalji, you did not clear it with me. Nehru is saying that, no, I did clear it. Gandhiji insists that you did not clear it. Nehru says that you were in Bihar, the telephone line was not clear. Gandhiji gets up, walks out. He's persuaded to come back. So this is how this resolution of the All India Congress Committee 14 June was passed. The meeting was being loudspeaked outside. It was on the speakers. Read the contemporary reports. This complete aspect is missing from our mainstream discourse. So you have immense amount of, I don't know, but I'm just college. So you have this complete discourse being discussed outside, and the partition resolution is passed, and we go in for partition. And there is a huge amount of opposition to this. Virtually every leader that mattered in 47 is against it. But the nation is partitioned. More importantly, if you study the British press, there are questions being raised that if a person changes his religion, does he change his nationality? It is a very fundamental, simple question. Kashmir mein yahi hua. When Hindus started getting converted, Kashmir was made into an Islamic state, and we start. So this question is being raised here also, that if your religion has changed, or does your nationality change with your faith, or does it change with your religion? So these are very basic questions being raised. And the discussion in the British press is that dominion status is being given in disunity. Why should the Indian leadership have insisted on dominion status in disunity? They should have sought it in unity. So these are basic issues that are being discussed in June 1947. Next slide. These are some photographs, just to the anecdotal references here. You can see Govind Banda, again back to the... you can see Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel, Govind Bandal Pant in the bottom photographs. The quality is not very good. These are picked up from newspapers actually. This is Acharya Kriplani and Gandhiji in the center. The gentleman in the right is, but this is just, we can move to the next. All right. Now, among the extensive criticism that comes in, for example, the Tribune is a great opinion maker in the Punjab of 1947. Gandhiji ranked it as the best opinion making newspaper of the 40s during the course of the freedom struggle. The Tribune, I'm quoting from the Tribune, this is dated 1st October 1947. We accuse those whom Providence has made the architect of our destiny of accepting the two-nation theory, of describing the unprecedented suffering as the price for freedom. The Punjab is ruining the day when Indian leaders compromised with communalism. This is Gopi Chand Bhargava, the Congress chief minister. He is saying Punjab is ruining the day when leadership compromised with communalism. Ajit Singh, the great freedom fighter. And these are just some examples. I could give you 100 more like this. The champions of partition will not escape condemnation in history. This is Ajit Singh. And this is dated 9 June 1947. Now, of course, you have it here. Britain has no right to change the map of India. This is 27th of May, if I'm not wrong. This is 27th of May. And this is, yes, 27th of May. This is just a few days before we go in for partition. So you have Gandhiji saying Britain cannot change the map of India. And 2 weeks later, we have the partition plan. A very fundamental question that has just occurred to me, in fact, it has not been discussed in the mainstream discourse or any discourse for that matter, is it has just occurred to me of late. The British were in India for about 200 years. Okay. Now, for a nation like India, whose history goes back to thousands of years, we've had different invaders coming in, different invaders going out, but never was India's past, never did India break with its past. Never was India disconnected with its past. I'm emphasizing on this point that the British in 200 years of their presence in India were given the right to partition the country. Now, what is Britain in 1947? In 1945, Britain has a debt of 3,000 million pounds. Britain has been shattered. Britain is not being able to retain even one of its colonies. And if you see the photographs in the Illustrated London News of the time, you will see that it's like a chessboard. Sam, Egypt, so Libya, all sorts of small countries. Do this there, do this here. And a set of bureaucrats is sitting in London and they're deciding the future of India. So the basic question that emerges is, after giving, you must understand the structure of the freedom movement. We all know about that. The spirit of the freedom movement was that Britain had done great disservice to India. How then, at the critical juncture, how then did we land up giving them the right to decide our future? This is a question that has to be raised. A country that is in the debt of 3,000 million pounds, a country that is shattered. If you look at the photographs of London in 47, but we are asking them to resolve our problem. So this is an issue that we need to focus on. The countries, Libya, Jordan, Egypt, Burma, Siam, Palestine, these are all small colonies, chessboard. India, country the size of India is also being, you see, you need to place it in perspective of the Cold War. 47, the Cold War has already taken place. And, you know, India has to be partitioned. It has to be compartmentalized. So we need to look at this in that dimension as well. Kashmir, I'm sure, I've just done a book on Kashmir. It is definitely the result of Cold War compulsions. So the partition aspect also, it was, to my mind, of course, it's presumptuous to say that these were great minds, great leaders. No one can doubt their patriotism or their sense of duty to the nation. You see, that's not the point here. I'm not trying to cast any aspersion, nor am I in a position to do so. But the point of the matter is that this is something that we need to keep mind on, track on. That Britain should not have been given the right to partition a country as old, large, and as ancient as India. This was uncalled for. When you look at the last months of the British in India, they were in India for about 20 months after the Second World War had come to an end in Europe. It is a remarkable change. You know, I get fascinated by the photographs. Deen Murthy has some good photographs, but the publication, the PIB, Press Information Bureau in Suchna Bhavan, also has a lot of photographs. So it is fascinating. The entire freedom struggle has proceeded on the assumption that Angrez hamare dushman hai, Angrezon ko humne yahan se bhagana hai. Somehow something happens in the last after Mountbatten lands in March 47. So you have this remarkable change in the feature. You know, having done Kashmir, I can vouch for it that not a single decision after 14th March 1947, be it on partition, be it on Kashmir, was taken without Mountbatten's assent. He was a party to everything. In this book that I've, you know, the one that on partition, in the epilogue I've discussed this. I've discussed in the epilogue how he was influencing critical decisions. The mystery is why it happened. Mountbatten gave the first Jawaharlal Nehru lecture at the University of Cambridge in 1966. In that lecture, he says, I was fascinated by the Indians. I attended over 200 farewells in 10 months after the transfer of power. So that means a farewell party or a welcome party was being given every day. So you have this unique kind of bonding, unique kind of, you know, to the extent that, as I've discussed it, I've shown the photograph in this book. Mountbatten has the audacity to suggest to Jawaharlal Nehru, and again, this I'm talking with full authority as a student of history. Not a single statement that I'm making is unsourced. Everything is sourceable. He has the audacity to suggest to Prime Minister Nehru कि नया झंडा बनना है, तिरंगा बनना है. Why don't we have a small sign of the British Empire, the Commonwealth on it? This is on record. कि नए national flag पर you have in the corner, let's have a small emblem that shows our bonding with the Commonwealth. Nehru's answer, and Mountbatten is putting it in the minutes. His answer is कि I don't know, but the extremists, he uses the word extremists. The extremists in the Congress will not agree to it. And he goes out. The same suggestion is put to Jinnah Sahab. Jinnah Sahab snubs the Viceroy. He says, what are you saying? How can I visualize my flag having a symbol of the Commonwealth? So this is how things, you know, things are, this is an out of context, anecdotal reference. This is, it's not related to the script per se, but just to give you an idea, the kind of bonding that is existing between the Indian leadership that has been struggling against the British in these last months is fascinating. I think we have some photographs. I'll show you some photographs. Next slide, please. Now, this is the last day. On the top, you have these two photographs of Gopalacharya ji with Lady Mountbatten, and you have the Prime Minister in the background kissing the hands, a farewell to Lady Mountbatten, and of course Rajgopalacharya ji with Lord Mountbatten. In the bottom, you have this famous dinner in which the Prime Minister has said something that need not be referred here, and he makes a very contentious statement here. And this is that famous dinner. Next slide. Now, these three photographs are very meaningful, very important. The first photograph shows you Mountbatten's arrival at Palam Airport, 14th March 47. Liaquat Ali Sahib is standing with him. In the bottom, you have, this is that historic meeting in the Viceroy. Mountbatten is driving the car, Pamela Mountbatten, his daughter, and in the back seat you have the Prime Minister Nehru, and of course Lady Mountbatten. This is Mashobra in the outskirts of Simla. I'll tell you the significance of this just now. And the third photograph is extremely important. You see, this is 21st of April 1947. Now, those familiar with the Punjab's violence, 21st of March, sorry, not April, 21st of March. A few days after the Mountbattens have landed in Delhi. Now, on the same day, I was aghast when I saw this. When I saw the film of this, on the same day, the Tribune carried a headline that 4,000 people had been massacred in the Multan and Rawalpindi riots. The headline of the Tribune on that day is this, and you have this photograph there. Photograph, of course, is from the album, but this function is reported to in that report. From 100 kilometers from Delhi is Mewat. 37 villages of Muslims had been burnt to ashes in Mewat on one day earlier. The significance of this kind of photograph, some would find it superfluous, of course, is to give you a feel of how distant the leadership in Delhi was from the ground happenings. That is critical to understand. You see, these photographs tell a lot of story. Now, I could describe this photograph in 10,000 words. It could be described in one word. So you need to remember this, that this is the Delhi of 1947, early 1947. This other photograph, I'll just come to that later. You know, this has been an issue of why the anarchy, why the killings. A lot has been written. But you need to understand the basic incidents. Preponing of power. You know, preponing of power means that the British were decided, the British had actually, in February when Prime Minister Attlee made the statement of transferring power, the idea was 48 June or July. Now, suddenly you have this whole process being preponed by almost a year, close to a year. A lot of people have written on this. I'm going to cite from three people. Ian Stephens, he's editor of The Statesman, and by far the most important journalist in India in 47. Pendle Moon, he was Deputy Commissioner of Amritsar. I've seen his personal files. And an excellent historian, and those who are familiar with the Transfer of Power volumes would know that he's one of the editors. A brilliant man, very popular in the Punjab. And finally, Sir Evan Jenkins, the Governor of Punjab. I've seen his papers also in Southampton. Now, Stephen says, this is very important to understand the anarchy, the killings. What is the significance of the preponing? Nothing during my life has appalled me so much. Possibly events would not have been so bad had time been taken. Mountbatten served the interests of Britain more than India and Pakistan. This is Evan Stephens, a British man who is editing The Statesman. India was too big for war-torn Britain, unquote. Pendle Moon, the longer we stay, the more risk we run of being engulfed in civil war. Pendle Moon. Sir Evan Jenkins, brilliant man, the man who predicted the violence to the dead. He was one of the finest officers that Punjab has ever had. He writes, quote, peaceful partition of Punjab is most improbable. Communal writing will spread rapidly when we cannot impose partition without a force, which I believe we do not have. He says we don't have the force to impose partition until we plan for it. So why did yet we went ahead? You know, there is a very famous meeting, a very famous minute of the Viceroy, which again is completely absent in the mainstream historical discourse. This is a meeting. When my book went in for publication, one of the editors was very insistent on seeing the source. I said, don't worry about it. We have sufficient evidence of this. This is a meeting in Simla, 17th April 1947, between Krishna Menon and the Viceroy. Krishna Menon has gone as a representative of Jawaharlalji, and he says, Mountbatten is very keen these days that we should be a part of the Commonwealth. You know, you understand the Commonwealth, they be part B of the larger British family. Krishna Menon tells him, this is recorded in Mountbatten's own handwriting in his minutes. Southampton mein available hai file ye. And of course in Transfer of Power mein bhi hai, iska edited version hai. He says that he is very keen for India to join the Commonwealth. Krishna Menon says, no, that's not possible. Commonwealth means the crown. Our freedom struggle has been against the crown. The crown was the symbol of our opposition. How can we become part of the... But he says, it is possible we might consider it, provided dominion status is preponed. वो एटली वाला. See, dominion status is preponed. Mountbatten was so happy. वो तो वैसे ही भागने की बात कर रहे थे. They were very keen to run away from India. He was already being advised that we cannot stay in India. Mountbatten records with his own hand in the evening, the same day, as was his habit. He says, the advice, the suggestion from Krishna Menon came to me as if it had come from my own staff. इससे ज़्यादा और क्या remarkable coincidence होगा that this evidence, my own staff members would not have suggested such a thing to me as has been suggested. He jumped at the idea. A few days later takes place the historic meeting between Jawaharlalji and Mountbatten, 7th May. He rushes off to London. The whole process is preponed, and you have this whole process starting off. So, the unfolding of events, the preponing of power, the historical genesis, and it is being questioned. Don comes up with a big story, so do so many others, so many other leaders are also questioning. इतने बड़े-बड़े निर्णय हो रहे हैं, huge consequential decisions are being taken at a private level. Two people are sitting together. This is the crux of it. Most of the leadership, whether it is Lohia, whether it is even Kriplani, Tandon, all of them are questioning, why are you taking such major decisions at a personal and private level, as if you are discussing some planning of some picnic or some foreign trip. You are discussing the future of India. Don comes up with a huge story explaining how this is going to, so this is the kind of background that you need to, you need to remember. Now, coming to the anarchy and the killings. Now, this is a basic question that any student of history would like to know why it happened. Why did, as I said in the beginning, 500,000, 700,000, a million people were slaughtered, killed, and I've discussed the brutality with you already. You see, something very amazing happens. On the 3rd of June, there is a press conference in Delhi, the historic press conference in the Constitution Club. It is so important that Sardar Patel is chairing the press conference and Mountbatten is to break the news of the partition plan. A reporter gets up and asks the Viceroy, are you planning for an exchange of population? The Viceroy says, no, we are not going to have an explanation. No exchange of population is expected. A few thousand people living on the borders might exchange. This is 3rd of June 1947. In the next 3 months, close to 15 million people are going to cross the borders. The first meeting to plan for the partition exchange of population takes place on 5th September. What bigger irony can you have? 15 million, 14 million people are crossing borders. There is no plan to exchange of population. The government is refusing to accept it. When they realize that it is happening, first official meeting for organizing the exchange of population takes place on 5th September 47. Records are speaking for itself. All the files are speaking for itself. So the anarchy, as I said, is explained by the lack of planning. You see, what is the result of this? You're telling someone, no, you please stay on in your village. And suddenly a mob comes to your village and you're asked to vacate it. What are you going to do? The killings take place because of that. There are several anecdotal incidences. The SSP Lahore, his personal diaries are in Cambridge at the Center for South Asian Studies. Now, SSP Lahore is WHO rich. He has already been given sanctioned his leave. 1st of July, he's told that you are to be SSP of Lahore during the partition plan. Uska saman ja chuka hai, mentally wo England pahunch chuka hai. और उसको कहा जा रहा है कि आपने idea to cite, there are several other examples of this. Idea to, I'm citing this specific example is to give you an idea that the entire government was in transit mode. हर ऑफिसर मूवमेंट पे था, हर डीएसपी मूवमेंट पे था, हर तहसीलदार मूवमेंट पे था. हिंदू वहां जा रहे थे, मुसलमान यहां आ रहे थे, कोई पुलिस स्टेशन में अफसर नहीं था. गवर्नर पंजाब को टेलीफोन नहीं मिला. टेलीफोन, गवर्नर पंजाब शिमला में थे, जालंधर में टेलीफोन का कनेक्शन, टेलीफोन नहीं मिला 1 महीने तक. ऑल इंडिया रेडियो से अपने ऑर्डर कन्वे करने लगे. डीसी को क्या ऑर्डर देना, टेलीफोन नहीं मिला, गवर्नर को टेलीफोन नहीं मिला. दिस वाज द स्टेटस ऑफ पंजाब इन 1947. इनसबऑर्डिनेशन. ट्रेन जो मुसलमानों की ट्रेन का मारकाट होती, you know, the trains that were taking Muslims to that side were also massacred. The trains that were bringing Hindus, they were also massacred. How was it happening? Because the train engine, एक incident है, a train had to wait at Old Delhi station for 2 days because they could not get a Muslim driver. So you have countless examples of this. Trains being taken off and trains being stopped, and in the mob is collecting. A meeting takes place in the Viceroy. Viceroy suggests in this meeting, you know, it's a very fascinating incident. When Patel tells him that we cannot check this, our train staffs are conniving with the other side. So Mountbatten says, this train में जो guards हैं, if they have gone uninjured, they will be shot. That means they have not done their job. इस तरह की resolutions आ रही हैं, complete chaos है. Just to give you a general idea, subordination, there is no you can see the next photograph there. This is 3rd June. This is that press conference to which I was referring, addressed by the Viceroy, and the Viceroy's statement. I'll give you a small example. You know, this issue of not being given time, of not being advised of what is going to happen. This is around the 30th of August. Prime Minister Nehru and Liaquat Ali are on a peace march, traveling on a road from Montgomery to Okara in Lahore ke paas thoda. And coincidentally, on the other side of the road is a huge convoy of Sikhs coming from Lalpur. So it is a huge convoy, and you can imagine, visualize the scene as students of history should be doing. Take your mind back to that time and try to visualize 2 prime ministers, the amount of Tamjhan there must have been there with them. And they are standing there, and the convoy is passing by, and who is reporting? Durga Das. Durga Das later became the editor of the Hindustan Times, and it's a very well-written report, which I have accessed. So Durga Das writes that you can imagine a scene where 2 prime ministers are standing on the roadside, and a convoy is passing by, and no one is looking at them, as if कोई खड़ा ही नहीं है, दिखाई नहीं है. जवाहरलाल जी का थोड़ा he showed his anxiety. He crossed the road, Durga Das writes, और जाके उन्होंने, he interacted with an old lady and said, where are you from? Just a courtesy, sheer courtesy coming from a generous-hearted prime minister. And the lady did not respond. She just looked him through and said, "Je tu karna hi si." Dasya kyun nahi? When I cited this in my book, I got a lot of response, even from Pakistan. Je tu karna si, tu. Durga Das has quoted this. Je tu karna hi si, dasya kyun nahi? Questioning Jawaharlal, if you had to do it, why did you not? See, this, to my mind, this is the crux of the common man's perception of partition. Questioning the Prime Minister of India. And that explains the anarchy, that explains the violence of why it happened to such a level. And Jawaharlal, of course, was shocked. He was speechless. And to the extent that Liaquat Ali crossed the road, as Durga Das puts it, catches the Prime Minister's hand and brings him back to the car. This is how this story goes, of the grassroots understanding of partition. We can see some photographs now. Next photographs. See, now those who are not familiar with rural India, rural Punjab particularly, would not be able to understand this perception. You know, I'm a villager, I've born in a village, I've grown up in a village. So you see, for a farmer, you can, you know, I picked on these photographs for the book also and for this presentation also with a basic purpose. For a peasant, nothing is useless. You know, a khali tin bhi, tuti chhatri bhi, whatever you can think of is of utility. You can see, you know, empty bags, empty tins, whatever, because a farmer never discards anything, you know, a peasant never discards anything. वो किसी ना किसी काम वो कहीं ना कहीं आ जाती है. So they're carrying everything. They're very classical, beautiful photographs. The resolution थोड़ा कम है, but they're very significant. Broken umbrellas. See the, you know, the next photograph, please. This is just to give you an idea of, you know, the violence. थोड़ा सा दिखाना तो Delhi, Calcutta, Lahore. I agree with you totally, but चलिए next. चलिए. So this is Kolra. You know, I belong to Kurukshetra, which was the largest refugee camp in 1947. शहर की आबादी 8,000 लोगों की थी. The camp had 3 lakh people. So you can imagine what must have happened with a small town when they built the biggest. Kurukshetra का death average 47 में 65 deaths per day. Refugee camp जो Kurukshetra वाला है. My village is just 15 kilometers from there. So 65 deaths per day of cholera. So this is the photograph from our Kurukshetra camp. Next photograph, please. Now, okay. So let's move to the, you know, it's very difficult to say now, for example, actually, you know, Hindu Marra, it's not a question of who is dying. It is the nature of which the bodies are being treated, you know. Now, refugee camps is a long story. Long story in the sense that they are ridden with corruption. I mean, I must first preface myself by suggesting that no government anywhere in the world could have held a dimension, could have managed a scale of such chaos and anarchy. So it would be unfair to pass aspersions of that kind. But when you come to contemporary reporting, it is ridden with corruption. You know, all kinds of stories are you know, being taken over in these places. Cholera, widespread hai. The refugee camps were of different kinds. You had a temporary refugee camp which was short for a few days. Then you had a bigger one, and finally you had the permanent camp, which was Kurukshetra, Karnal, and Faridabad, and so on. So these were camps where you stayed until you were actually given your land or your shop or whatever. So you had people staying for even up to 4 years in refugee camps. So you had different. Kurukshetra was the biggest camp in 1947. Now this is okay. Now coming to the most critical part of what partition meant to women. A lot has been written on it. And some very good, very fine pieces of scholarship we have. I'm not going into that. I'm only trying to focus on the manner in which young girls, I have already referred to that briefly earlier, the young women particularly bore the brunt. So these are camp, you know, rebuilding of lives. It's difficult to say what the children were, you know, where they were from, what traumas they had undergone. But we have reports in the Kurukshetra and the Karnal camp of large number of young girls who managed to escape, who managed to cling on to some family. Even up to, say, about a few years ago, some of the camps were still functioning. These homes were still functioning. Sadly, the story did not end there. My wife, of course, is a professor in gender studies, and she conducted a survey many years ago on how did some of these families evolve. So the story that emerged, the version that we had was that most of them were limited to small jobs, you know, small petty knitting, ye wo chota mota kaam kar karke they passed on. Some of them did, of course, do well. So, but the general story was like this. I'll just, and then Professor Kapil will say, don't show any more pathetic pictures. I won't do that. Now let's come back to, how much time do I have? 5 minutes, so maybe 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Okay. The immediate aftermath. Now, this is something which I'd like to emphasize on. That the version that we have in discourses is one version. 1947 was completely corrupted. There was so much of corruption in 47, it's difficult to explain it here. The Punjab, I'll give you one lead if you're interested in this kind of history. The Punjab Legislative Assembly met for the first time after partition in November 1947. Pick up the microfilm of the Tribune and start with 1st November 47. It is in Teen Murti here. And you will find your stories. The debates are shocking. Ministers are casting aspersions. You killed that family. You took that land. This is the Punjab Legislative Assembly. It is ridden with corruption. The complete police system, prime lands, prime houses, prime shops, The rule was that if you had one shop in Anarkali, you would be given one shop in Delhi's Connaught Place or in Simla's Mall Road. There are examples of people getting 3 shops in Connaught Place and 3 in Simla. Stories are coming out in the Tribune. Complaints are coming out. There is a complaint cell in Jalandhar. Thousands of complaints are flooded in. My land was occupied. My house was occupied. This man was killed. This. And who is doing it? The political leadership. In connivance with the police officers. The biggest premium in 1947 is on posting of deputy superintendents of police and SPs of police. सबसे बड़ी सिफारिश जो है वो DSP और SP को लगाने की है 1947 में. Gopichandra Bhargav is an honest man. He is fed up. And who is doing it? The political leadership. I'll show you a sequence of, and this again is not me. This is Shankar. Thanks to the Teen-Murti library. Many years, 20 years ago, I got hold of some cartoons here, going through the journals here, and you'll be surprised to see some of them. Again, before I come to the cartoons, just a second, please. It's very important to understand that the mainstream narrative that we have developed over the last 50, 60 years, which of course is being questioned now, a lot of people are working on it. The last 20 years, last 20 months of the British, what good did they do? They changed the entire narrative. आखिरी 20 महीने जो हैं, उन्होंने सारे नैरेटिव को इतना इस हद तक चेंज कर दिया कि हमारी कंटिन्यूटी अपने देश के साथ कम और कॉलोनियल पार्ट्स के साथ ज्यादा होगी. We became more British than the British themselves. Our academics, our administrative system, our civil service, our media, everything, it was just a continuation. Had we continued with the pace of the freedom movement, perhaps there may have been a disconnect. This disconnect did not take place because of this bonding that took place in the last 20 months. This is a price that this country is going to pay. Something that people are trying to change. This mindset. Academics, whether it is civil service, whether it is the basic approach of administration, it is a continuation. So this is this total picture. Again, this is not 2021. This is Shankar doing it in 1947, 48. He is questioning it in 47. What have we done? We have simply inherited the British system. We have simply inherited all the corrupted system. Now let's have a look at the cartoons. The first is torches freedom. Okay. The date is important here. And this is in time. These two people, the remarkable manner in which this great man used to depict his characters. You have two people, don't talk loudly. The common Indian is shown in the corner, on the right-hand corner. Don't talk loudly, otherwise it will be sedition. And there you have the propaganda wing. Don't miss the caricature, the style of the satirists can be very, very powerful. Bloated stomachs, well-fed, singing of freedom. This is not how the perception was in 47, 48. It may seem a bit bitter today, but the fact of the matter is this is how it was. Next, please. Another remarkable illustration. Call to duty. Don't miss the date. 10th October 1947. 10th October 1947 means abhi bhi Punjab ke andar 5-7 lakh people have been killed. Their blood is still together. The saying goes that still not dried. And what is this? This hunger for power. 10th October 47. You have readings like Minister of State, Additional Minister, so and so, and the PNs, the working staff, the daftaris are saying ki ye to hamare upar bhi baat aayegi, and the date is 10th October 40. The hunger for power. So this transparency of the Gandhian legacy, we are all patriots, we are doing it for the country, we fought for the country, that is all humbug. At least Shankar felt like this. Okay? The next one. Typical Delhi, I am not a Delhiite, I don't stay in Delhi, so what they say happens in Delhi, So if there is no chance for ambassadorship, can't you get me some petrol per? This is what date? 23rd of May 48. Ambassador nahi banate to petrol ko coupon hi de do. 17 York Road, Prime Minister ka residence us zamane mein, jo culture hai. Remarkable, again, you have to look at you see, the Shankar was a very powerful medium. You have to study his face, his facial expression. Prime Minister obviously is not happy with it, but you can make out what is happening. Okay, next slide. Finally, the most important one. The date is 30th January 49. That means the first anniversary of Gandhiji's assassination. If you can read it, I'm not sure if you can read it. I'll just read it out, The first one is, I got my assembly seat in your name. In your name means Gandhiji's name. I got the Jaggery permit in your name. That's the second illustration. I got the controls lifted in your name. I tried to be a deputy minister in your name. I had my son fixed in your name. Fixed means a government job. I always advocated provision in your name. I wear khadi in your name. I put on my cap in your name. And now, Father, forgive me. This is the first anniversary of Gandhiji's death. So this is the India that we're dealing of in the post-partition years and the the roots of what we are today, of what we became today, were not sudden. It grew into a tree. The roots are traceable to the good old times, as we say. बहुत अच्छा जमाना था वो तो सब लोग बहुत अच्छे लोग थे, patriots थे, patriotism भरी पड़ी थी. So these are some basic ideas. With these, I'll just close, and I'm very grateful you've given me a patient hearing. I may have overstepped my.
Thank you very much, Professor Tanwar. It has indeed been a delight for all of us to listen to you this afternoon, speak on what was happening around the time of partition, what were the voices, and how was it seen by the ordinary people, and the massive corruption and other problems that were actually being discussed at that time, but which have been neglected by historiography in the last 7 decades or so. So we are now open to questions and comments from the audience. Please be brief and introduce yourself.
I'll take my question sitting.
Yeah. Please use the mic and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I will take you from the first illustration that was presented. First of all, let me congratulate the author. And particularly this lecture, well documented and evidence-based, of course. And that is why I'm taking cue from the lecture itself, first illustration. You asked for it, a cartoon published in Civil and Military Gazette. And besides this publication, there were 2 more publications which were being published at that particular moment. Was Sindh Gazette, Sindh Observer, and Military Gazette. And
Civil Military Gazette.
There was a Military Gazette also, third one also. And a story was carried out. It was 44, 45 around. Rajaji's pact with Jinnah. So there was a pact, as reported. And as we have evidence that is available, and that's a fact, historical fact, that Rajaji proposed a formula. That is called Rajaji formula. Rajaji proposed a formula for partition, much before. That is the question, because I have to create the background.
Please come to your question.
Yes. I am talking about 1945, 44, 46, and this was happening. This was, Rajaji proposal.
All right,
He
beg your
prepared a formula, and Mountbatten created a plan, and on the basis of that was 46, and on the basis, this is a historical fact, and part of the legislative history of Indian Independence Act. No, this is not the question. Question is that both the two, I'm taking cue from the this abstract. The last 20 months of British presence in India witnessed a peculiar bonding of friendship. What impact did this leave? Fine. So Rajaji was the second Governor General. Under Indian Independence Act, arrangement was left. Rajaji was the second Governor General and Mountbatten was the first Governor General. So they had to deal with the things to implement including Kashmir.
All right. What
So
is your
was
question,
it,
please?
question is, what is a mere coincidence or
All
was
right.
it a part of plan?
All right. All right.
What was the coincidence?
Please use the mic.
To substantiate and either new evidences to what you are concluding. Now, I would like to know from you that have you come across any source which perturbs me a lot, that a country which exploited India for 170 years, carried massacres, killed people, jailed people, tortured people, its last representative in this country is made the first Governor General of India, and that there are shouts in Parliament House that day, Pandit Mountbatten ki jai. And the Union Jack is not brought down that day in the Viceregal Lodge. It is only the Indian flag which goes up. So have you come across any such document which tells us that where and who took this decision to make Mountbatten as the first Governor General of India? Was it a personal decision of Nehru, like that Menon thing you have quoted with the Viceroy? Was it a Congress Working Committee decision? Was it an AICC decision? Where was this decision taken? The most brutal decision, because this man, right up to the Kashmir aspect and POK creation and ceasefire, is responsible for the destruction of India. That is one. Second thing, I give you the evidence for that. When you are saying that how this thing happened, Mountbatten, when he was the commander of Southeast Asian forces, Nehru's visit to Singapore in March 46, was arranged by MI5 agent Hugh Toy. That is on record now. To familiarize, because in 45 December, after Wavell's letter that let us reach a compromise and come to an agreement, else there will be a movement much more larger than 42, 31st December 45 letter back home, and Auchinley's letter saying that if we have to stay in India, we will need 1 lakh European soldiers because an 1857 type situation has emerged. The INA fear had created this clear thing in the British that they can't rule over India. Now this thing is taken, they are very clear in after 45 December that India has to be partitioned, what has to be done. The question before the British is, who is to be given power in India? And please remember one history of Congress. That when did Congress, in its entire history from 1885 to 1947, actually emphasized and fought for independence? Even after the 1929 Lahore decision of complete independence, why did Gandhi go back to dominion status? And why are they hiding? What we got on 15th August, we have been fooled for 75 years, was dominion status. And I give you this last minutes, 22nd May 47, if I am not wrong on the date. At least cabinet meeting minutes which have been declassified now. At least. It says, now the Congress leaders are, and which tallies with your this preponing thing of this thing. Now the Congress leaders, and he names 2 leaders, are saying that independence for India can wait for 2-3 years. And we will be happy with dominion status if it is given early. So we can create a Hindu dominion and an Islamic dominion. And what is created is a dominion. Every document you pick up of that period, it says Dominion of India, Dominion of Pakistan, Premier of Indian Dominion, Prime Minister of Indian Dominion. And this whole thing, well, there are plenty of evidences in that. The last evidence I'll say is, because you show those photographs, there's much more to that. Don't forget the foreword written by Mountbatten to the book of this Vijayalakshmi Pandit, in which he says that when Nehru came to Singapore, I welcomed him. I advised him not to go to the INA Memorial, to which he conceded. And from there started the friendship between me, him, and Edwina. And ended up with Pamela. I think Pamela is her name, daughter's name, Mountbatten's name, which writes that on Kashmir ceasefire, my father asked my mother to ring up Nehru and make him agree for ceasefire. My mother asked whether Nehru will agree, and my father said, if you ring, she will agree. And I'll stay by ending. What was so special that our Prime Minister of what they called independent India within quotes had to send an INS Nilgiri frigate from Mumbai to the English Channel to put garlands on the grave of Lady Mountbatten in the sea of in the British Channel. So there's much more and more, and I am happy that history is speaking out now.
All right.
Can I just also add to a small question? You said that the people in Punjab, they were told that partition is going to be a temporary measure. So what were they saying, that India and Pakistan are going to be united again? And who, I mean, what is the logistics and how is it going to work out? If you could tell us something about that.
You were told to boycott the vote.
Yeah, there is one.
We can take that in the second group.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll lose track of what is being raised.
Okay. Go ahead.
Ashok, it's gone through. See, nothing happens by chance. Your assumption that it was nothing in history is a coincidence. It was actually worked out. So I'll just end it by saying that nothing happens by chance. If there's a lot of underground things happening here, we can continue that afterwards because we are in touch with each other. So it should not be an issue. All right. Professor Kapil, of course, with his emotion and his all this. Sir, fact of the matter is that in this entire period, 14th March to the day Mountbatten was in India, not a single decision, whether it is Kashmir, whether it is partition, whether it is formation of the cabinet. To lighten the mood here, I'll just give you a small example. When the first cabinet, again, see, I have this habit of quoting only from minutes from I don't go from biographies and autobiographies. I depend mostly on minutes. So Mountbatten says, Nehru says that Mountbatten says that he goes with and he gives them a lifafa ki first cabinet ki formation kya hogi. वो लिफाफा खाली है. Mountbatten himself has said that the first cabinet proposal given to Mountbatten was actually a blank sheet of paper. And again, so many people, but this is on record. Transfer of power ke andar ye hai. So likewise in Kashmir, I'll just to elaborate the point a bit, make it more clearer. Liaquat Ali is staying in Rashtrapati Bhavan. I'm missing the date. It's not, I'm forgetting the date. But of course, it is around these days. And Mountbatten, Nehru is to meet Liaquat Ali. There is no scheduled meeting between Nehru and Mountbatten. But Mountbatten sends a message to Nehru that before you meet Liaquat Ali, come and meet me for a minute. This is around 9:30 in the night. The meeting with Liaquat Ali is scheduled for 9:30. Nehru goes to Mountbatten. The meeting with Mountbatten continues for 1 hour. Now, the files on Kashmir papers, you see, this selected works has a huge problem of Nehru's selected works. So I actually call it selected works,
It is not even selected.
No, see, those, when I was working for my book on Kashmir, selective would be more right. So, this minute is not there in the selected works. Us minute mein kya likha hai ki Mountbatten is advising him ki Liaquat Ali gusse mein hai. Agar tum ye kahoge, if you say this, it will become easier. What does he suggest? Ek to plebiscite ki thoda ko UN ki intervention thoda ho jaye, it might be better. Ek wo 56 crore ka jhamela pada hua. So, he is actually suggesting that this money which the Reserve Bank of India had to give to Pakistan, which was not given, and in this critical minute, this is a few minutes before this is the level to which decisions are being taken. The idea of going to the UN, I've been fascinated by this idea. Where did it originate? This is lying in a file in Teen Murti. Ab to khul gayi, ab sab log dekh rahe hain.
General Carter, EP Menon's letters to Mountbatten before the meeting between Liaquat Ali and Nehru. Is you say, give value to the Pakistanis, the progress to India.
All right. Let him answer. So the basic issue is that the level to which Mountbatten is influencing decision making in India is to be understood. There's a very pertinent thing that you raised. You see, entire leadership of the time, including Kriplani, including Gandhiji, including Nehru. See, there was I wish I had bought that cartoon. There is a cartoon, again by Shankar, which shows that Jinnah and Liaquat Ali are setting up a separate shop.
in Lahore. And the Hindu Mahasabha president, Babakar ji, is meeting Jawaharlal and pleading with him, what have you done? Jawaharlal, don't worry, it's just a temporary fight and ye to bhaiyon ka jhagda hai, and they'll come back soon. This idea is actually seriously sold. I'll give you at a personal level, not called for in a conference like this. I was born in a village in Kurukshetra. I'm that way Haryanvi by nature and everything. But my wife was from Punjab. My wife's great-grandfather was the first MBBS doctor of joint Punjab, and very well off by any standards. In 47 May, that is how this book actually took form. When my mother-in-law would tell me these stories, she was 14 years, my mother-in-law at that time. They had gone to Manali, where they had a summer home, thinking that it will, even a man at that level thought that it will resolve. And May ke andar they went to Manali, and by August it was done. They had to come back with a handful of clothes. They left all their assets, all their properties in Khaneba. There are hundreds of cases like this. People studying law, medicine in Lahore, staying in Amritsar, left their books in Lahore, thinking we will go back. So countless, but please understand, if you go through the classified advertisements of any newspaper, particularly Punjab-based, the Tribune in particular, Lahore-based, you will find classified advertisements seeking exchange of property, big properties from early 46. गांधी जी तो कहते कहते चले गए कि ये क्या हो रहा है, अमीर आदमी तो चेंज कर रहे हैं, गरीब आदमी वहीं बैठा हुआ है. So you have classified advertisements changing bungalows, changing businesses, changing lands. Starting off in 46, 90% of Punjab did not know it's going to happen. They were convinced it will not happen. That is precisely the reason why they stayed back. They were told. In fact, there are a lot of theories that economic compulsions would force them to gain again. This idea of re-merging existed up to 50s. I mean, had it not been for Kashmir, I don't know what would have happened. Kashmir, of course, raised another issue. So that part is there. They were selling this idea that it's a temporary measure.
Can I ask a quick supplementary question?
Please.
The trauma of partition, you describe it. It is really a horrendous episode in our national life. But I'm curious to know that the second generation of the people who suffered, they seem to have a lot of amnesia about it. Do you agree with that? And how do you account for that?
This is actually, I partly blame it to in 2008, I was in Southampton. There was the 60 years of India's independence, organized by a set of British historians. I was asked to give a plenary lecture there. And when I finished my lecture, an Indian scholar based in Cambridge got up and very angrily said, why do historians from India, particularly North India, come back to partition again and again? I was a bit nonplussed, after speaking for 1 hour, and then you get a question like this. I said, I don't know. This amnesia is not really, if you've traveled in the Punjab, if you've met the family, that generation is going away now, Even today, when I speak on partition in, say, Amritsar, you would have 500 people sitting there. So this amnesia is gradually, perhaps, I really don't have an answer for this, why it should have happened. But the false narrative that has been created under state parliament, under state partition, lest it, the glorious chapter of India's struggle for freedom, the heroics, great minds taking great decisions, that should not be disturbed. And some of our very dear friends have been leading this narrative. But now we have begun to question it.
Yeah, switch on the mic, please.
You mentioned this debt of 3 billion.
Pardon?
3 billion pounds debt.
3 billion pounds. No, 3,000 million pounds.
That is 3 billion pounds.
3 billion, obviously.
Yeah. How does one explain? Is it just the war?
Possibly. See, because, if you study, if you are familiar with European history, which European nation was in a position to hold on to its colonies? Cite one example. They were destroyed. The war had shattered Europe. And here, it is like saying that a judge hai, kapde nahi hai, latta nahi hai, uske paas kuch nahi hai, and he's, please come and resolve our problem. This is just an afterthought. I may be totally off the mark in this. Because by raising such a question, I'm raising the question on the great minds of the time. That's not the point. But it does occur to a student of history. I've been working on it for 35 years, and it has occurred to me only in the last few months. That why did we actually trust them?
We had fought a freedom struggle against them. So many sacrifice, so many of our youth had just walked to the gallows. You know, if you read the statements of people like Udham Singh and Dhingra and and so many others, countless revolutionary, 20 saal mein their young boys are dying. So in spite of that, we say, come and resolve our problem. We are fighting and please help us. So I personally feel England was not in a position to sit as a judge on our. That's that. Please.
Madhuji has a question.
Ji.
Please switch on the mic.
Yes, I can come after.
Is there? हाँ, आप आ जाइए, आप माइक पे पूछिए. हाँ.
हेलो सर, आपका जो सेशन है उससे मुझे बहुत सारी चीज जानने को मिला और मेरा नाम मोहम्मद उमर अशरफ है और मैं पटना का रहने वाला हूँ. तो मैं अभी प्रोफेसर कपिल सर के अंडर में काम कर रहा हूँ और मेरा जो वर्क है वो उर्दू सोर्सेस पे है. तो आपने एक तस्वीर दिखाई थी जिसमें पंडित नेहरू बैठे हुए हैं जमीन पे और साथ में बहुत सारे लोग हैं. तो उसमें आपने ये कहा था कि एक तरफ जश्न हो रहा है और दूसरी जानिब मुल्तान में, रावलपिंडी में लोग मर रहे हैं और मेवात के इलाके में लोग मर रहे, दोनों कम्युनिटी के लोग मर रहे थे. तो सेम ऐसी ही साइकी बिहार में जो अक्टूबर 46 में जो दंगे हुए थे वहां पे भी सेम यही चीज मिली.
मैंने इस किताब में फोटोज दिए हैं.
दो कंटेम्परेरी सोर्सेज हैं सर. एक है वो जो शायरी का सबब हुआ जिसको कलीम आजिज साहब ने लिखा है और दूसरा है दास्तान मेरी जिसे प्रोफेसर इकबाल हुसैन ने लिखा है. दोनों ने ही उस वक्त जो मिनिस्टर थे सैयद महमूद साहब जो पंडित नेहरू के बहुत ही करीबी लोग थे, उनके बारे में यह है कि बिहार में दंगा हो रहा है और इनके घर में पार्टी चल रही है. और सैयद महमूद साहब वो हैं जिनके घर में गांधी जी आके आखिर में 40 दिन ठहरते हैं और नेहरू जी भी आते हैं, वहीं रुकते हैं. तो ये इस साइकी को मुझे समझना है कि एक तरफ लोग मर रहे हैं, दूसरी तरफ मिनिस्टर, प्राइम मिनिस्टर, बड़े बड़े लोग जश्न कर रहे हैं, इसका क्या है. और सेम इसमें मुस्लिम लीग का भी एक ये मिलता है कि बिहार में मुस्लिम लीग के जो सबसे बड़े नेता थे उनका नाम था सैयद हुसैन इमाम. तो उसमें इकबाल हुसैन साहब ने लिखा है अपनी किताब में, मतलब खुद वो आंखों देखा है, चूंकि वो उनके फादर ICS थे तो इन लोगों के रिलेशन काफी अच्छे थे. तो वो उसमें लिख रहे हैं कि सैयद महमूद जो कांग्रेस के लीडर हैं सबसे बड़े बिहार में और दूसरे सैयद हुसैन साहब जो मुस्लिम लीग के, ये दोनों एक साथ किसी अंग्रेज के यहाँ जश्न मनाने गए हैं और दंगे चल रहे हैं बिहार में. तो मैं इस साइकी को समझने की कोशिश कर.
देखिए, इट्स वेरी फैसिनेटिंग. आपने क्या नाम बताया बेटा अपना?
मोहम्मद उमर अशरफ.
हाँ, मोहम्मद उमर. ये है कि ये साइकी को समझना प्रयास भी मत कीजिए क्योंकि समझ आएगी नहीं. है मुझे खुद समझ नहीं आई. मैं 70 साल का होने जा रहा हूँ. तो ये बड़ा मुश्किल है और इसीलिए हम लोग हिस्ट्री के स्टूडेंट्स जो हैं वहाँ की रियलिटीज पर जाते हैं. मैं जिस गांव से बिलोंग करता हूँ वो एक हिंदू राजपूत और मुस्लिम राजपूत का गांव था 47 से पूर्व. हमारे गांव से 15 किलोमीटर दूर कुरुक्षेत्र का रेफ्यूजी कैंप था जो देश का सबसे बड़ा कैंप है. मैं आपको उदाहरण दे रहा हूं कि ये साइकी कुछ में होती है, कुछ में नहीं होती है. तो उस रेफ्यूजी कैंप में जो लोग आए, क्योंकि बहुत मारकाट, दिल्ली में हजारों लोग थे, कहते हैं ना, एक गॉडसे नहीं हजारों गॉडसे थे दिल्ली में. आपको अंदाजा अगर आप रिपोर्ट्स पढ़े उस जमाने की कि कितनी निराश है लोग, कितना गुस्सा भरा हुआ है. तो जब फर्स्ट रिपोर्ट गांधी जी की हत्या की आती है तो लोगों ने सोचा कि रेफ्यूजी ने मारा होगा. मेरा ये समझ, यू हैव टू गो बैक इन टाइम टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट. तो उस जमाने में हमारे गांव को इन लोगों ने आके, रेफ्यूजी कैंप के लोगों ने आके हमारे गांव को घेर लिया. मेरे पिताजी, दादाजी कहने लगे भी यहाँ से हम एक भी मुसलमान परिवार को अपने घर से नहीं, गांव से नहीं जाने देंगे. 3 दिन तक वो घेरा बना रहा. आर्मी आई, उनको लेके गई वहां से. तो साइकी किस लोग किस लेवल पर इन्वॉल्व होते हैं, मैंने आपको केवल एक उदाहरण दिया है. जो जश्न है जिसकी मैंने फोटो दिखाई है उसकी एक लाहौर के अखबार में सिविल मिलिट्री गजट में एक व्यक्ति जिसने अटेंड करी थी वो पार्टी, उसने रिपोर्ट लिखी है उसकी. और वो कहता है मैंने अपनी जिंदगी में इतनी कीमती और महंगी शराब आज तक नहीं देखी जितनी मैं आज यहाँ देखकर आया हूँ. इस किताब में मैंने उसको नोट दे रखा है. तो ये साइकी को समझना, आई डोंट नो, इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट. अगर आप अंग्रेज जो आ रहे हैं वापस, एक लियन फिल्डन है एक व्यक्ति, वो आते हैं जब आजादी हो चुकी है, वो दिल्ली में घूम रहे हैं और उन्होंने एक रिपोर्ट लिखी कि मैं तो हैरान हो गया हूँ दिल्ली को देखकर. ये वही दिल्ली है गांधी जी की जो आजादी वाली दिल्ली है. ये तो पहले से भी तामझाम बढ़ गया है. यहाँ तो ऐसे ऐसे आलीशान काम हो रहे हैं, ऐसे आलीशान पार्टीज हो रही हैं. तो ये एक दास्तान है, ये चल रही है. और मैंने इसीलिए तो ये कार्टून मैंने ऐसे नहीं दिखाया आपको. नथिंग हैपेंस बाय चांस, इट इज ऑलवेज पार्ट ऑफ अ ब्रॉडर स्कीम. ओनली टू गिव द आइडिया कि ये जो कंटेम्पररी नैरेटिव है, जो डिस्कोर्स है, जिसका आपने बहुत सुंदर ढंग से बात कही अपनी, ये डिस्कोर्स को हमें समझना है. अगर हम इन बातों को पहले उठाते 50 साल पहले, तो आजादी के उस दास्तान पे धब्बा लगता ना थोड़ा बहुत। 5 लाख, 7 लाख, 10 लाख, या 50 लोग भी मरे, आज तो 2 मर जाते हैं तो हंगामा खड़े, 7 लाख लोग मरे। तो डोंट गो इनटू अंडरस्टैंडिंग दिस साइड, ये समझ नहीं आएगी आपको, भूल जाइए इसको। जी
आपने कहा कि before I come to what you said, I'd like to respond to what Meenakshi had asked. Someone who comes from a family of partition refugees, जो एक सेंटेंस शायद आपने पहले भी रेफर किया हो, मैं लेट आई, माफी चाहती हूँ, बट इट वाज बियॉन्ड माय कंट्रोल। मेरी माँ जो बोलती थी कि पार्टीशन के प्रति उनका सभी का क्या रवैया रहा, कि एक सेंटेंस बहुत टेलिंग सेंटेंस है मीनाक्षी, कि राजा तो बदलते हैं, प्रजा कभी नहीं बदलती। सो कहाँ कोई सवाल ही नहीं उठता कि लोगों को अपने घर बाहर छोड़ के जाना पड़ेगा। स्पेशली नॉर्थ में तो लोगों को बहुत आदत थी, बाहर से आया, कौन आया, फिर वो डायनेस्टी चली गई, ये वो, पर प्रजा नहीं बदलती। ये माइंडसेट से लोग अड़े रहे और देन दे सफर्ड अ लॉट। कमिंग बैक टू योर कमेंट सर, आपने कहा कि जहां तक फेमिनिस्ट स्कॉलरशिप का या औरतों के साथ, स्त्रियों के साथ क्या हुआ, उस पर बहुत अच्छी स्कॉलरशिप हुई है। अब जो थोड़ा बहुत मैंने फेमिनिस्ट स्कॉलरशिप इसकी थोड़ा भी संज्ञान लिया है, तो मेरे जहन में तो यही आता है कि फूड फाउंडेशन का एक प्रोजेक्ट,
यू आर अमंग द गुड स्कॉलरशिप दैट आई हैड इन माइंड।
बट पार्टीशन स्टडीज पे मेरा नहीं है, पर फूड फाउंडेशन का प्रोजेक्ट लिया जाता है। हिंदुस्तान की फेमिनिस्ट बहनें और पाकिस्तान की, ये जॉइंट प्रोजेक्ट होता है कि हमें बताना है स्त्रियों के साथ क्या क्या हुआ, और यानी उनके साथ मैंने दंगों की बहुत स्टडीज की हैं, जिसमें स्त्रियों के नजरिए से दंगे देखे गए, चाहे 84 का हो, चाहे बम्बई राइट्स हो, पर पार्टीशन मैंने खुद नहीं किया। अब उसमें जो मुझे दिखा, जो थोड़ा बहुत मैंने समझा और जिससे मेरा तो खून खौला, वो ये कि सारा का सारा एम्फेसिस है कि हिंदू मर्द कितने पेट्रियार्कल जालिम थे, इन्होंने कैसे हिंदू और सिखों ने अपने घर की औरतें काटी, पीटी, उनको मारा, और फिर जो कोई वापस आई त्यागा। यानी उस समय में जब जेनोसाइडल वायलेंस हो रही है, सब लुट पिट के आ रहे हैं, ये जो स्ट्रेस रिस्पॉन्स, ये मैं नहीं मानने को तैयार, बिकॉज आई कम फ्रॉम अ पार्टीशन रेफ्यूजी फैमिली एंड ऑल्सो कम फ्रॉम अ ट्रेडिशन जहां औरतें जौहर किए हैं, चिता जल्दी में जंप किए हैं, ताकि हमारी बॉडी, डेड बॉडी भी ना इनके हाथ लगे, ये डेड बॉडी को भी नहीं छोड़ते हैं। वहशीपन इस कदर का रहता है। तो स्त्रियां खुद जंप की, और ऐसा नहीं था, ज्यादातर जो मुझे थोड़ा बहुत ज्ञान है कि यहाँ स्त्रियों के साथ हुआ या जो बच गई, उनको ऐसा लगा कि हमारे पिता ने या पति ने या जिसने भी हमें उस तरह से त्यागा या नकारा जैसे बताया जाता है, या जैसे धूल का फूल, शायद कौन सी फिल्म थी, हाँ 60s में एक आधी पार्टीशन की फिल्म बनी, तो उसमें भी यही है कि you blame the victimized Hindu community for their patriarchal, their anti-women attitudes. I've honestly found that kind of scholarship very distressing, because आपका जरा भी compassion नहीं है community के साथ, और this is, you know, this is the mindset of gender war. Even at such a time, you're trying to create that. What would you say?
See, actually, please.
So as I feel it, you use the word scholarship for that. Something, a narrative which is purely ideologically biased to serve certain ideologies for political interests, I will not call it a scholastic narrative. One thing. Second thing, this letter is still in public domain, which I am quoting to you. There's a letter of September 1947 written on the letterhead of Baldev Singh, the defense minister, on his letterhead, signed by him, Baldev Singh, with a stamp of defense ministry. The letter is written to Sardar Patel, and it says, there are still more than 20,000 Sikh and Hindu women in their custody in Lahore. Because of international reasons, I can't send my forces. Please talk to RSS to send their volunteers to save them. And a copy of that letter is marked to Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. Okay. It is going to be out in the public domain.
I'll just add here. You see, somehow it has been assumed that now I understand from the discussion that scholarship is meaning a particular set. That's not the point, actually. There is a lot of material, not very far, right next to in the annex here. The Mridula Sarabhai papers are available here. Okay. Now, Mridula Sarabhai, I've discussed it at length in my earlier book, was a person who had been assigned to recover women. Okay. Now, she is going overboard in telling the world that so much has happened here. Nehru is very unhappy with the manner in which this narrative is being built. You'll be surprised to know that Mridula Sarabhai, who had been almost a family member with the Nehrus, reaches a stage in the post-recovery days, झगड़ा ऐसा हो जाता है कि she is not allowed to enter the house. There are notes written by Nehru, don't entertain her. Simply because the narrative that she was trying to create is that much has happened in the Punjab and it has to be looked into, and the international media is being pulling into this discussion, which is not suiting the narrative being created by the so-called glorious freedom struggle and nothing happened understating. So this is one angle. There are small booklets, that, for example, Talib's book, small booklet on women. So you have a lot of these people who have written small booklets, which incidentally, some of them are available even in our library downstairs, but most of them I saw in the Center for South Asian Studies at Cambridge. They have these small little booklets. So the narrative that I was referring to, and partly, of course, there are other scholars also, is that a lot has happened. I agree with what you are saying. I understand the psyche. I understand the psyche and that this happened and that happened. But broadly, the fact of the matter is that women on both sides, that is not something we can dispute. The trauma, yes, you were saying something.
No, I fully agree with you that women's trauma needs to be understood, documented, and dealt with in its own right. And you cannot understand partition or any other riot or any other crisis without taking that into account. And there will be specific aspects to that narrative which will be hurtful and embarrassing for the whole society. But the point that I would like to refer is just as, for example, female infanticide or parda of women was a distress response of Hindu society to the fact of lakhs of women being abducted and sold as sex slaves, auctioned and humiliated in front of their own eyes. Now, in such a situation, to begin to see your daughters as boj, as not desirable, or ये जो पंजाब की कहावत है, जितने बेटे उतने लठ, जितने लठ उतना कब्जा, because that's the kind of world you were living in. And in that situation, yes, men turned against their women. हारे हुए इतिहास के खिलाड़ी, brutalized, not just हारे हुए, वो औरतों पे निकालते हैं. But the point is the trauma of the heart, the humiliation, the defeat, the forced conversions, the abductions also needs to be understood. If you just play on one without contextualizing it, and Pakistan, mind you, doesn't do that. Pakistani feminist historians didn't do this because, the theoretical understanding is they are not so bothered about what they call Yoni, Shuchita, whatever, That's the point I was making. So I don't know which scholarship or writers you had in mind when you said there's a lot of work being done. Now you mentioned those little books, but if there's more, I'd like to read.
There is a question. There is a.
Dr. Madhuji's. You see, I have this habit of depending too much, as I said in my lecture, on, I don't go into. I'm not a fiction reader per se, so that should answer the part. That I don't depend on my sources for fiction. I don't read fiction at all, for that matter. I have this habit of reading minutes and small reports, and some of the reports are unbelievably brutal. You cannot. I have. The British officer who's escorting a train. He describes in an incident. Of what he has seen. Another officer who's assigned the duty of guarding the Karnal camp. He is assigned. He describes what is happening. You have a lot of these kind of stories, and I see your point fully, and I totally agree with what you are saying. That is the Punjab psyche, actually. I totally agree. I don't have a difference of view on that.
All right. We have a question from one of the online participants. Please go ahead.
There's this lady here.
We'll come back to her. We'll come. Yes, please go ahead.
May I ask the question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. So I just wanted to, after this excellent presentation, I want you to, if possible, sketch out something in a little bit of even more detail. What you have argued is that partition is illegitimate and undesirable. That many leaders did not want it, people did not want it. It led to a great deal of suffering. Now, there is no doubt about that. But how do you address the argument, which was very much there at the time? For example, Rajendra Prasad said it, that this has to be done to avert a civil war. In the scale of tragedies of the 1940s, 500, 700,000 dead is a lot. But Bengal famine was perhaps 3 million dead. So it is a quarter of that number. Now, you yourself said, you put it very well, that entire government is in transit mode. Completely, I agree. Who is going to take orders from a government or leadership in transit mode? The British themselves, they are on record saying that people worship the rising, not the setting sun. So they felt their power was draining away. Now, can you then, this is my request, that there is a happier story which underlies or is assumed, a happier alternative scenario, which is assumed in the kind of lecture which you have given. And may I request you to elaborate on what that counterfactual happier story actually is. Thank you.
You see, regarding the opposition to the partition concept, you cited Dr. Rajendra Prasad, but actually he's also one of the major opponents of the partition idea. He, in fact, he repeated, the British do not have the right. What nature has created as one, no one has the right to divide that. Again, this, we have these records, but you're probably right. But the more important question is that when the masses are not involved, you see, this is what I've tried to emphasize. The masses per se are not engaged in understanding. This is the basic question that comes across both the northern part of India and lesser in Bengal. Bengal, it was better organized in the sense that the migration was mostly urbanized. It was not peasant-based. But the masses were not involved in this. They did not understand the nuances. Now, coming to the question of a very pertinent question, and this is the pro-partition assertion that you find always, that what else did we have? Most studies, most records tend to indicate in retrospect today that partition could have been avoided, or at least better planned, better executed. Better planned, better executed. The very fact that the number of Muslims who actually leave India, it was nowhere then far less than what was expected. More Muslims actually stayed back in India than Pakistan at the time. So the idea per se was that the division is superficial, elitist based, and regional, specific regions. Assuming that it was necessary, it should have been better worked out. This is what most of the field officers I've cited from Jenkins. I've cited from the then editor of the Statesman, Ian Stephens, and several others. That had it been better worked out, after all, it is, we cannot just overlook the part that almost close to 1 million people, some would say, I would say even 500,000 were killed. So it's very difficult to say what is the alternative, what is the other option that we had, and you know, whether it was avoidable, to what extent it was avoidable. I mean, I would leave it at that, I think, if that's okay with you. I mean, would you like to add to this?
You see, the question really is that you could have 2 million killed. It is we are a large country. It is region specific. So I agree with you that, you know, we cannot, at this distance in time, one cannot say whether 2 million, 3 million would have died. Who can actually tell? But that is an assumption which we make, that it could not be much, that it could have been much better. In hindsight, yes, people will say it could be better planned. Others will say it would have been much worse. How do we decide?
The writing was on the wall.
No,
Noakhali has given to you what was going to happen.
Sir, let the speaker respond.
See, basically, as you're saying, the writing may have been on the wall, but my understanding is that at the grassroots, partition was not something that had evolved. You know, it was not a natural process. The Punjab was a very peculiar kind of province. You know, like if you look at the sociological structure of the Punjab, every village, there's not, as I said in the lecture, not a single village could claim exclusivity. You know, you had castes. Jats were Muslim Jats, Hindu Jats. You had the bonding of caste factor, the innate bonding, the underground bonding, which was not evident. Not suggesting that there was no stress. No, after both major communities, majority communities have evolved through a different process in history. Tension was bound to be there, but never to the extent that you must leave this place. So this is in retrospect today. I mean, it's difficult to say what would have happened, but it appears from contemporary sources that at the ground level, it appeared to be avoidable.
Yes, we have one question from there. Please go ahead. Please be brief.
Hello, sir. I'm Dr. Lipika Roy, Junior Fellow here. Thank you so much for the lecture, sir. You saw that I became a little emotional too, as me and my entire family, we are the victims of partition, Bengal partition. My mother, she was 13 when she had to come from Sylhet to Assam. And Sylhet was part of Assam only due to just Sylhet referendum. They became refugee in their own land. And my father, he was from Brahmanbadia, Kumilla. He had to leave from that place to Tripura. So my maternal uncle, he got killed in front of my mother. So it's really emotional for all of us. But sir, I would like to know that after partition, refugees become second citizens kind of in their own land. So their new generations are facing problem in daily life. We have to prove our loyalty towards the country, which is our own land. But then we have to prove every time in front of everyone. So I would like to know your views on that and what is the solution?
I don't know. I mean, I'm very surprised rather. I don't find this happening. That on the contrary, in the Punjab and Haryana, it is the opposite. You know, for example, those who moved in from the West, yeah. I'm not sure about Bengal, I have not been able to comment on that. In Punjab and Haryana, the agrarian practices, the trade practices, the education has all come in with those who came from across the border. So there's no question of proving or trying to prove, you know.
In Assam, we have this.
That is a different issue. I see your point, but don't go by this assumption. After 75 years, we are already into the third generation now. The present Chief Minister of Haryana is a refugee per se, you know. And so many countless. I know so many people who are in Haryana, Punjab, we look up to them. I mean, we've learned so much from the population. They've changed the entire profile of the region.
I think we have run out of time completely.
Yeah, this lady, she had something on mind.
Please be very brief. Yes, go ahead. Use the mic.
At the very beginning, it was said that there was a disjunction between the elitist leadership and the common people. My question is that during the 1945-46 election campaign, both sides, both the Congress leadership as well as the Muslim League leadership, they had spoken very clearly about what they were going to ask for. Congress was constantly harping on unity, and I think I don't know whether I should use the term Akhand Bharat. I'm not familiar with the election campaign lectures, but Jinnah was very specific that he wanted Pakistan, and Jinnah never defined what Pakistan was going to be like. But I mean, both sides, those who opted for Pakistan, those who voted for Pakistan and the Muslim League, and those who voted for the Congress leadership, they knew that there was some kind of bifurcation, there was some kind of disjunction.
All right. Okay.
So why is it being?
That it was the election of 1937.
Even 45, it's okay. See, go to the point that when you talk of elections in pre-47, you're talking of around 15% people, 15, 16, 17%. Okay. And who are these 15%? Income tax payers, government employees, pensioners, ex-servicemen. So the structure of this is what Jayaprakash Narayan is raising much later.
But the common people heard everything, no?
No. The common people are not part of the process. Common people are not voting in 45. They're not voting in 37.
They were not voting, but they were listeners. They were familiar with the argument.
The structure of the leadership. The structure of who are the people who are sitting in the assembly? This is what Jayaprakash Narayan has questioned. He says, do these people who are basically nominated, most of them are nominated from this year, that place, he questions that. Did they have the moral right to take a decision of this magnitude? The masses were not part of the game. It was not universal. No, far from universal. It was 15, 17%.
Now,
so whenever you talk of an electoral representative pre-47, whether it is 35 election, whether 37 election, whether it is 45, please remember the voting pattern. Please remember the electoral college.
No, but even if they don't have representation, they are familiar with the arguments.
But they don't have the say. You see, they're not part of the decision making.
I think the important question that flows from what she is saying is this. I'm sure you are familiar with the work of Venkat Dhulipala, who shows very clearly that in the case of Uttar Pradesh, in his book, Creating a New Medina, he says very clearly, and with a lot of evidence, he debunks this idea that among the Muslim masses, there wasn't any large-scale support for partition for Pakistan. And his case study is focusing on Uttar Pradesh, and he shows that in the case of Uttar Pradesh, the idea of Pakistan had gone to the masses, to the very roots, and it had large-scale support. In fact, being a Muslim had become coterminous with support for Pakistan. That's his thesis. I'm not saying it is necessarily correct, but I'm not saying it's necessarily correct.
Very logically, why was the migration not there?
Yeah, now, just a moment.
No, at that level.
Now, when the question of let us
that explains no migration.
Now the reason is when we come to this migration question of why the migration did not take place from Uttar Pradesh in any large number, I have a speculation in mind, and that is this. At some level, the partition of India was also a partition of basically two provinces. It was a partition of India at a larger level, but at a lower level, it was a partition of the two provinces of Punjab and Bengal, which had their own. Let me just complete. The two provinces had their own history, they had their own politics, and they had their own social structure. Like this young lady asked, why is it, I mean, another question flows from that the scale of violence in Punjab was much higher than the scale of violence in Bengal. This is also a question.
Many times higher.
Many times
it's
higher.
not true. And it's not true.
No,
It's very contradictory.
I think many people migrated from.
Other thing is, as we know very well, that most of the forced migration of non-Muslims from what is now West Pakistan happened very quickly, as you highlighted in your lecture, within a few months. Once it
Within
became,
days, within
yeah,
days.
once it became clear that partition was, once it became clear that partition was going to happen, or once it did happen, it happened very quickly. On the other hand, in the case of Bengal, it was more of a trickle. Over the years,
It was better organized.
yeah, it was better organized. So probably that aspect
Bengal
also has to
partition
be
still
dealt with.
continues.
These two questions flowing out of what these two people have said. If you would like to respond.
She was talking about Sylhet. That was a separate.
See, we are. I think we are actually mixing up. We are mixing it up actually.
Yeah, it was part of Assam.
No, it was definitely. It was better organized in the sense that both the governments were wanting to exchange populations.
It continues till today. From Punjab.
All right. Now we will carry on this discussion over tea. Tea is waiting outside, and cold tea is not good tea. So let's continue the discussion. Thank you very much, sir. हाँ? अब नहीं हो सकता, बहुत ज्यादा हो